From a house cat's claws to industrial espionage, to a mysterious theft that remains unsolved to this day, the creation of horror's most iconic weapon is stranger than any nightmare. The bladed glove that terrorized Elm Street teens wasn't just crafted on screen. It sparked real-life heists, accidental injuries, and bizarre Easter eggs across multiple film franchises. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Freddy Krueger's glove. Fact 1. Inspired by Wes Craven's pet cat, one of the most terrifying weapons in horror movie history came from the most ordinary moment imaginable, watching a house cat scratch furniture. Director Wes Craven was sitting at home one evening when he noticed his pet cat clawing at the side of his couch, and that simple domestic scene sparked the idea for Freddy Krueger's razor-fingered glove. Craven wasn't just thinking about how cats scratch things, though. He was digging deeper into something more primal and universal. In interviews, he explained that he wanted Freddy to have a weapon that tapped into fears buried deep in the human subconscious. Fears that people from any culture or time period would instinctively understand. He thought about early humans and what would have terrified them most, and he realized that one of the oldest fears was being attacked by a predator with claws, like a saber-toothed tiger reaching out with its massive hooked talons, or a cave bear swiping with razor-sharp claws. Craven took that ancient terror and translated it into a human hand, creating something that felt both familiar and deeply unsettling. The glove became an extension of Freddy himself, almost like a natural part of his body rather than just a tool he picked up. This cat-inspired design choice was also part of Craven's larger goal to make sure Freddy had a signature weapon that audiences would never forget, something as iconic as Michael Myers' kitchen knife or Leatherface's chainsaw. Every successful horror villain needs their own unique way of terrorizing victims, and thanks to one cat's scratching habit, Freddy got one of the most memorable weapons ever put on screen. Fact 2. Robert Englund cut himself. First try. The original Freddy Krueger glove wasn't just a prop designed to look dangerous on camera, it was genuinely hazardous to anyone who wore it. Robert Englund discovered this the hard way during his very first attempt at putting on the glove. The moment he slipped his hand inside and adjusted the metal finger covers, he felt a sharp sting and realized he had cut himself on the actual razor-sharp blades. The production team hadn't dulled the edges or made them safe for handling because they wanted the glove to look as real and menacing as possible on screen. Englund later joked about having to be extremely careful whenever he wore the glove, saying he had to watch out when going to the bathroom or he could accidentally change his religion, a humorous way of pointing out just how dangerous those blades were in such close proximity to his body. The special effects designer Jim Doyle remembered that moment clearly and mentioned how he had tried to warn Englund to be careful right before it happened, but the warning came just a split second too late. Despite the initial injury, Englund had to wear various versions of the glove throughout filming, including the hero glove with real metal blades for close-up shots and safer stunt versions with rubber or wooden blades covered in reflective material for action scenes. The fact that the main glove could actually draw blood added an extra layer of tension to the production, because everyone on set had to treat it with genuine respect and caution, knowing that one wrong move could lead to a real injury rather than just a fake movie wound. Fact 3. Not Robert Englund in opening scene. The very first time audiences saw Freddy Krueger on screen, they weren't actually watching Robert Englund at all. During the opening credits of A Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a memorable sequence showing Freddy's hands assembling his infamous glove in a dimly lit boiler room, cutting the fingertips off a work glove and carefully attaching the metal blades. Those hands belonged to special effects assistant Charles Bellardinelli, not the actor who would play Freddy throughout the rest of the film. The reason for this switch was entirely practical rather than artistic. Bellardinelli was a former carpenter who had helped design the glove from the beginning, and he was the only person on the entire film crew who truly understood how to construct it properly and safely, handle all the delicate cutting and assembly work required for that opening scene. Years later, Belardinelli talked about how people would sometimes argue with him about this fact, insisting that it must have been Englund's hands in the opening, but he would firmly correct them because he knew the truth firsthand. He specifically remembered that one of the first things viewers see in that sequence is Freddy cutting the fingertips off the work glove, a detail that Belardinelli performed himself because he had the technical knowledge to do it correctly without damaging the prop or injuring himself. This behind-the-scenes detail adds an interesting layer to the film's opening moments, showing that even before Robert Englund officially appeared as Freddy, the character was already being brought to life by multiple hands working together to create one of horror cinema's most iconic villains. Fact 4. Made with tomato knives, not steak knives. For decades, fans and even some film historians have mistakenly believed that Freddy Krueger's glove was made using regular steak knives, but the actual blades came from a much more specific and unusual source. The production team used Case Twitzy P210 tomato knives, a specialized kitchen tool designed for slicing through delicate tomatoes without crushing them. When mechanical special effects designer Jim Doyle sat down with director Wes Craven to figure out what kind of knives should be attached to the glove, they went hunting through various options brought in by production designer Greg Finesca. They looked at different knife samples and kept searching until they found something with just the right look, and when they came across these particular tomato knives, they knew immediately that they had found exactly what they needed. The case, whining? P210 knives had a distinctly bizarre appearance with their long, thin, serrated blades that looked far more menacing and unnatural than ordinary steak knives would have. The shape and length of these blades gave Freddy's glove its signature threatening profile, making the weapon look like it could easily slice through anything it touched. These tomato knives were designed for precision cutting in the kitchen, but on Freddy's hand, they became instruments of terror that helped define one of horror's most recognizable villains. Over the years, replicas and costume versions of the glove have often used incorrect blade types, but true collectors and prop enthusiasts specifically seek out original Case Twitzy P210 tomato knives when they want to build the most accurate recreation possible of that first 1984 glove. Fact 5. The glove was stolen, maybe twice. The whereabouts of the original Freddy Krueger glove remains one of the most contested mysteries in horror movie memorabilia, with multiple people claiming to own it and conflicting stories about how it disappeared. At a convention panel years after the film's release, Robert Englund dropped a bombshell when he openly admitted that he had stolen the original glove himself. According to Englund, director Wes Craven had given him the glove to use for pickup shots during the filming of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 on a small soundstage in Hollywood. While working there, rumors started spreading about industrial espionage, with fans apparently posing as crew members and wearing tool belts to blend in, all in an elaborate scheme to steal the iconic prop because they understood just how valuable it had become. Englund said he decided to take the glove himself to keep it safe from these would-be thieves, and he eventually had it mounted in a plexiglass display case outlined with red and green neon lights before giving it to his agent as a gift. The twist to this story is that Englund claims his agent still has the glove and refuses to give it back to him. However, the mystery deepens because a fan named Mike Becker has also claimed for many years that he owns the original Hero glove, leading to speculation that either Becker or Englund's agent actually possesses one of the stunt gloves instead and simply doesn't realize it. Some believe Englund would be the most reliable source on which glove is which, since he was the only person who wore all the different versions on a daily basis during filming. Fact 6. The glove created Freddy's iconic stance, one of Freddy Krueger's. Freddy. Most recognizable physical characteristics, his distinctive slumped shoulder stance, wasn't something Robert Englund planned or rehearsed, but rather an accidental result of wearing the heavy metal glove. The Hero glove used for close-up shots was constructed from real metal components, including copper finger covers, a brass backplate, and actual steel blades, which all added up to create a prop that was surprisingly heavy to wear for extended periods. Englund discovered that after wearing the glove for a while during filming, his body would naturally compensate for the weight by dropping his right shoulder downward. an unconscious physical adjustment that happened without him even thinking about it. When he noticed this happening and saw how it looked in the mirror or on playback footage, Englund made a creative decision to intentionally incorporate that slumped shoulder into Freddy's overall physicality and movement style. He later described it as being similar to the stance of a gunslinger in classic Western films from the 1940s and 50s, where cowboys would let their gun hand hang lower near their holster. This accidental discovery turned into one of the character's signature traits, giving Freddy a predatory and slightly off-balance appearance that made him look even more threatening and unnatural. While stunt performers used lighter rubber or wooden blade versions of the glove for safety during action sequences, Englund wore the authentic heavy version whenever the camera needed to capture Freddy up close, and that weight continued to shape his performance throughout the entire production, creating a physical characteristic that fans would recognize instantly in every subsequent film in the franchise. Fact 7. Made from 14 separate parts. The original Freddy Krueger glove was a surprisingly complex piece of craftsmanship that required precisely 14 individual components to be assembled together into one complete weapon. Breaking down the construction, the glove started with the base leather work glove as the foundation, then added a single large backplate that covered the back of the hand and provided structural support for everything else. From there, 4 separate metal finger covers were attached to protect and encase each finger except the thumb, and those finger covers connected to 4 individual fingertip pieces that allowed for articulation and movement. Finally, 4 razor-sharp blades were mounted onto those fingertips to create the deadly claws that made Freddy so terrifying, with the thumb notably remaining blade-free throughout the original design. This 14-part construction meant that building an accurate replica of the glove required significant metalworking skills and attention to detail, since each component had to fit together precisely to allow Robert Englund to move his fingers naturally while wearing it. The decision to leave the thumb without a blade was both practical and aesthetic, as it gave the glove a slightly asymmetrical appearance that made it look more handmade and crude, fitting perfectly with the idea that Freddy had built this weapon himself in a boiler room using whatever materials he could find. Later films in the franchise would sometimes alter this design, with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, notably adding a 5th blade to the thumb and changing the glove's overall appearance to look more organic and integrated with Freddy's hand. But that original 14-part configuration from 1984 remained the most iconic and recognizable version that fans associate with the character. Fact 8. Silver braze versus regular solder secret. When Jim Doyle attached the stainless steel blades to the original Freddy Krueger glove, he made a technical decision that would become one of the key ways to authenticate the real hero prop from all the replicas and later versions created for subsequent films. Instead of using standard lead solder like most prop makers would have chosen for a movie weapon, Doyle specifically used silver braze, a much more expensive and higher quality welding material that required greater skill and higher temperatures to work with properly. Silver braze typically contains between 30 and 60% actual silver compared to regular solder, which might only have 1 to 3%. And this difference created joints that were exceptionally strong and durable enough to withstand the physical demands of filming. Beyond just the structural advantages, Doyle chose silver braze because it produced a distinctly beautiful aesthetic appearance, with a unique patina and finish that looked more polished and professional than the duller, rougher look of standard lead solder. This choice meant that the original glove had a certain visual quality that sharp-eyed prop experts could spot when examining photographs or footage from the first film, since the silver braze joints caught light differently and aged in a characteristic way. The gloves made for later Nightmare on Elm Street sequels almost always used regular solder instead, both to save money and because replacement gloves needed to be constructed quickly during production, which made the silver braze technique one of the most reliable identifying features when trying to determine whether a glove was the actual original hero prop or just one of the many duplicates created over the years. Fact 9. Sparks made with a car battery. 2 of the most memorable sensory elements associated with Freddy Krueger's glove, the bright sparks that fly when he drags it across metal surfaces, and the nauseating scraping sound that accompanies those moments were both created using surprisingly simple practical effects techniques. The visual effect of sparks shooting off the blades whenever Freddy scraped them against pipes, walls, or other metal objects was achieved by literally hooking the glove up to a car battery, which would complete an electrical circuit when the metal sautéed. Blades made contact with another metal surface and create real sparks on camera. This was a straightforward but effective technique that required careful safety precautions on set, since working with live electrical current always carries risks, but it produced genuine sparks that looked far more realistic than anything that could have been added with special effects in post-production during the 1980s. The equally iconic scraping sound that makes audiences instinctively cringe, that teeth-on-edge screech that signals Freddy's presence before he even appears on screen, came from an even simpler source. The sound designers created this audio effect by taking a regular steak knife and dragging it across the underside of a metal chair, recording the harsh metallic scraping noise it produced, and then layering it into the film's soundtrack. This combination of real electrical sparks and authentically recorded metal-on-metal scraping gave Freddy's glove a visceral quality that audiences could feel in their bones, tapping into that universal discomfort people experience when hearing certain grating sounds, similar to the reaction most people have to nails on a chalkboard. Fact 10. Cameo in Evil Dead. 2. Toolshed horror movie fans with sharp eyes discovered an unexpected Easter egg hidden in Sam Raimi's 1987 film Evil Dead 2 when they noticed Freddy Krueger's distinctive bladed glove hanging on the wall inside the cabin's toolshed during one of the scenes. This wasn't an accident or a random prop choice, but rather part of a playful ongoing exchange between two major horror directors who clearly respected each other's work. The whole thing started back when Wes Craven was making the original A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, and he included a scene where the character Nancy Thompson is sitting in front of a television trying to stay awake. And the movie playing on her TV screen is actually footage from Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. Craven chose that specific film because the entire plot of The Evil Dead takes place during one long night where the main character Ash must survive until dawn without falling asleep, which created a perfect thematic parallel with Nancy's own struggle to stay awake and avoid being killed by Freddy in her dreams. When Raimi saw that Craven had given his film such a prominent nod, he decided to return the favor by sneaking Freddy's iconic glove into Evil Dead 2, hanging it above the door inside the toolshed where it appears briefly on screen. Eagle-eyed viewers can spot the glove in at least 2 different locations throughout the film, and this tradition of referencing each other's work continued even further when Craven later included more Evil Dead footage in his film Scream, keeping this friendly cross-franchise conversation going for years between 2 directors who helped define modern horror cinema. Fact 11. The knives were installed upside down. When Jim Doyle and Wes Craven were examining the tomato knives they had selected for Freddy's glove, they made an unusual creative decision that required significant additional work but resulted in a much more menacing appearance. After looking at the knives in their normal orientation, they realized the blades would look even cooler and more threatening if they flipped them completely upside down and used them inverted on the glove. The problem with this idea was that knives are specifically designed to have a sharp cutting edge on one side and a duller back edge on the opposite side for safety and control, which meant the knives wouldn't work properly in their flipped position without modification. To solve this issue, Doyle had to carefully remove the dull back edge from each knife using metalworking tools, then grind and sharpen a completely new cutting edge onto what had originally been the back of the blade. This labor-intensive process essentially required customizing each individual knife to function in its upside-down configuration, transforming kitchen utensils designed for slicing tomatoes into weapons that looked far more alien and unnatural than they would have appeared in their original orientation. The inverted blades gave the glove a distinctive curved profile that made Freddy's weapon instantly recognizable and added to the overall sense that this was something cobbled together by hand in a dark boiler room rather than a professionally manufactured tool. This attention to aesthetic detail, even when it meant extra work and modification, helped create one of the most iconic prop weapons in cinema history. Fact 12. The index finger blade broke during production. At some point during the filming of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the blade attached to the index finger of the original hero glove snapped in half, creating an emergency situation that required immediate repair to keep production moving forward. The special effects team quickly soldered the broken blade back together so Robert Englund could continue filming with the glove, but this repair left a visible seam across the index finger blade that remained present throughout the rest of the movie and became a permanent identifying feature of the original prop. Jim Doyle later confirmed this detail when discussing how to distinguish the real first glove from all the subsequent versions made for later films, explaining that anyone who knows what to look for can spot this telltale seam in photographs or footage from the original 1984 movie. This broken and repaired blade has become one of the most reliable authentication marks for prop collectors and horror memorabilia experts who study the differences between the various gloves created throughout the franchise, since the gloves made for A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Part 3, and later films all featured intact blades without this characteristic repair seam. The fact that this damaged blade remained on the hero glove throughout filming rather than being completely replaced speaks to the time and budget constraints of the production, where it was faster and more practical to solder the blade back together than to remove it entirely and fabricate a brand new replacement. Even decades later, when the original metal components of the glove were auctioned off for hundreds of thousands of dollars, that repaired index finger blade with its visible seam remained as a piece of authentic movie history. Fact 13. Generated $27 million in merchandise rights. The commercial success of Freddy Krueger's glove extended far beyond the movie theater and transformed into a massive merchandising phenomenon that generated over $27 million in retail rights alone. This staggering figure demonstrates just how quickly the glove became an iconic symbol that people wanted to own for themselves, whether as part of Halloween costumes, collectible replicas, or various other licensed products. For years after the original film's release in 1984, Freddy's glove consistently ranked as one of the most popular Halloween costume accessories available in stores, with countless manufacturers producing their own versions ranging from cheap plastic toys to more elaborate foam and fabric replicas that attempted to capture the look of the original prop. The glove's success in the retail market played a significant role in establishing New Line Cinema as a profitable studio, contributing to the company's nickname as the House That Freddy Built, since the revenue from A Nightmare on Elm Street and its related merchandise helped fund many of the studio's other projects throughout the 1980s and 90s. The fact that a single movie prop could generate this level of commercial interest speaks to how effectively Wes Craven and his team had designed something that resonated with audiences on a deep level, creating not just a scary weapon for one film, but a cultural icon that people recognized instantly and wanted to incorporate into their own lives. Even decades later, replica gloves continue to sell every Halloween season, and high-end collectible versions can command prices in the hundreds or even thousands of dollars from serious horror memorabilia collectors. Fact 14. 3 versions made for first film. Jim Doyle understood from the beginning that filming A Nightmare on Elm Street would require multiple versions of Freddy's glove to accommodate different types of shots and ensure the safety of everyone on set. He constructed a total of 3 separate gloves for the original 1984 production, each designed for specific purposes during filming. The primary version, known as the Hero Glove, featured genuine metal components and real sharpened blades that could actually cut someone if handled carelessly. And this was the glove used for all the close-up shots where the camera needed to capture fine details and make the weapon look as authentic and threatening as possible. However, using this dangerous hero glove for action sequences where actors were moving quickly or performing stunts would have been incredibly risky. So Doyle created 2 additional stunt gloves that looked convincing on camera, but eliminated the danger of accidental injuries. These stunt gloves featured blades made from hard rubber or lightweight balsa wood instead of metal, and those safer blade materials were then covered with a reflective material called mylar. that caught the light in a way that made them appear metallic and sharp when filmed from a distance. The stunt gloves allowed Robert Englund and any stunt performers doubling for him to move freely during action scenes without worrying about accidentally cutting themselves or other actors, while still maintaining the visual appearance that audiences expected from Freddy's signature weapon. This practice of creating multiple prop versions with different safety levels was standard in Hollywood productions involving dangerous items, ensuring that close-up beauty shots could look perfectly real while physical action sequences kept everyone involved safe from harm. Fact 15. The original leather glove is lost forever. When Prop Store Auction put the original Freddy Krueger Hero Glove up for sale in 2023, collectors and horror fans discovered a bittersweet reality about this legendary piece of cinema history. The auction listing revealed that only the metal components from the original glove had survived the decade since 1984, including the backplate, finger covers, fingertips, and the famous razor blades themselves. While the leather work glove that served as the foundation for all those metal parts had been lost to time and deterioration. The auction house had to mount these authentic metal pieces onto a newly created replica leather glove so the prop could be properly displayed and appreciated, since the metal components by themselves couldn't stand up or be worn without the leather base to support them. This partial survival of the original glove actually made authentication easier in some ways, as both Jim Doyle and Lou Carlucci provided letters confirming that these specific metal pieces were indeed the only hero glove with metal blades fabricated for the first film. The expected selling price ranged between $200,000 and $400,000 British pounds, reflecting both the historical importance of these components and the sad fact that the complete original glove as Robert Englund wore it no longer exists in its entirety. The metal parts showed signs of age, including scuffing and discoloration from use during filming, while the hand-drawn schematic that accompanied the auction lot exhibited creasing and edge wear, all evidence of the glove's nearly 40-year journey from active movie prop to valuable collectible artifact, missing one crucial element that can never be recovered, can never be recovered, can never be recovered, can never be recovered.